the rival tribe doesn't know what hit them. Surrounded, they have no answer for English firepower. Pokanoket and Pilgrims find common ground and a chance to survive. Two unlikely allies, a partnership all too rare in North America.
We have found the Indians very faithful in their covenant of peace with us. They are people without any religion or knowledge of any god, yet very trusty, quick of apprehension, ripe-witted, and just.
Their victory brings a period of peace to the colony. Their friendship is celebrated in a feast. In time, it will become known as Thanksgiving.
One of the main themes in the founding of America was a place to do business, a place to expand your horizons, a place to live a life of your own, practice your own religion. Those are the basic themes that brought people to these shores to colonize.
It's the start of a period of prosperity that will transform North America. From Jamestown and Plymouth, descendants grow across the landscape. As more and more people cross the Atlantic, thousands, tens of thousands, people with different backgrounds, different reasons for being here. America becomes the place for everybody from everywhere. Rolling the dice, coming together to create 13 colonies. From Jamestown, agriculture spreads across the South. Dirt farms transform into sprawling plantations. Irish, Germans, and Swedes push back the frontier. The Dutch bring commerce to a small island of the mouth of the Hudson River. Time will be named New York. The colonists are 2 inches taller, far healthier than those they left behind in Europe. The Puritans average 8 children, and they are twice as likely to survive to adulthood. They are 20% richer and pay only a quarter of the taxes of those in England. Many still think of themselves as British, but each generation grows further from its roots. Nowhere more so than Boston. May 9th, 1768. 7 generations after John Rolfe's first tobacco harvest, the British want a bigger piece of the action. A British customs official springs a surprise raid on the Liberty, a ship belonging to John Hancock, one of the richest men in Boston. But Hancock's crew has other ideas. They're carrying 100 casks of imported wine and don't want to pay duty. It's a radical act of rebellion against taxes imposed by a king 3,000 miles away. To the British, they're just common smugglers. This small skirmish changes everything. The British seize Hancock's ship, triggering riots that sweep through Boston.
We didn't want to pay taxes to a king and to a parliament where we didn't have a voice and we didn't have any representation. We have a natural resentment toward government, which was how we were born.
The king sends 4,000 redcoats to Boston to enforce his laws.
Boston was a city of commerce, culture, civilization, and revolution unfolding right before the eyes of the colonists and the eyes of the British.
October 1768. British soldiers clamped down on Boston, a port crucial to the British Empire and a hub of global trade and commerce. Its dockyards are some of the busiest in the world, producing 200 ships a year from America's vast timber reserves. A third of all British shipping is built in the colonies. Timber fuels the global economy, much like oil does today. Across New England, marks identify the tallest, strongest trees selected by the Crown for British ships. England has lost most of its forests. It wants American wood. In Boston, there's one redcoat for every 4 citizens. It's a city under occupation. Paul Revere is a silversmith, one of Boston's prominent businessmen. An unlikely subversive.
They formed and marched with insolent parade. Drums beating, fifes playing, and colors flying. Each soldier having received 16 rounds of powder and ball.
He is an upper middle class figure, someone who has risen through his own efforts, his own talent. He represents what we have created on our own with very little help from our cousins across the Atlantic.
But when revolution comes to North America, Revere will be at the center of it. Boston and the 13 colonies are an economic powerhouse critical to Britain. Nearly 40% of everything exported from Britain makes its way to America. The fishing fleet ships thousands of tons of salted cod to the Caribbean. It returns with sugar and molasses, raw material for rum, taxed by the British after every exchange. In Africa, rum is the currency used to purchase the most profitable cargo of all. African slaves. Between 1700 and 1800, more than 250,000 Africans are brought to the American colonies. More slaves than all those who came of their own free will. Most wind up on large plantations in the South, but they're also critical to the economy of the North. 10% of Boston's population is black. Boston is a melting pot, and tension is building.
Nobody likes invaders in their homes. To have people here, foreigners on your soil, is a great incentive for people to fight.
March 5th, 1770. After 3 days of unrest, an angry mob roams the streets. Hundreds of men who lost their jobs and blame the British gather on King Street and face off against 8 redcoats with orders not to fire. What's about to happen will change America forever. A 17-year-old wigmaker's apprentice, Edward Garrick, lights the fuse. This is how wars start. Private Hugh Montgomery is hit with a club. An African-American, Crispus Attucks, dies instantly. When the smoke clears, 4 more are dead. How Boston reacts will change the course of history. Silversmith and political radical Paul Revere captures the moment British soldiers kill 5 colonists in the streets of Boston. His engraving will fuel the fires of revolution as outrage spreads across the 13 colonies.
Unhappy Boston, see thy sons deplore, thy hallowed walks besmeared with guiltless gore, whilst faithless Preston and his savage bands, with murderous rancor, stretch their bloody hands.
The most formidable army in the world, firing on an unarmed crowd. An explosive image with a title that says it all. The Bloody Massacre.
There was the old joke, you give me a picture, I'll give you a war. Those who wanted to stir things up and to make a statement and maybe even lead a revolution, it made them able to rally others to their side.
News spreads fast. The colonists are avid readers, a legacy from the first Bible-reading Puritans in Plymouth. Boston has the first weekly newspaper. There are now more than 40 papers across the colonies, and the new Postmaster General, Benjamin Franklin, has introduced a revolutionary postal delivery system. Night riders cut the delivery time in half. The communications network connecting the colonies is one of the best in the world. The British have no idea. They hope the news can be contained. Before news reaches England, most of America knows about the Boston Massacre.
It's a very American spirit of an idea, this idea that everybody should have access to knowledge. It's very much like that pioneering idea. Everybody should be able to make their way in the world.
A printer in Connecticut can read the exact same story as a farmer in North Carolina. December 1773. The Boston Gazette breaks another story that will fan the flames of rebellion. The rising tide of anger and resentment forces England's hand. They repeal all taxes, except one on tea. It's not enough. In one of the most famous acts of resistance in American history, rebels dump over $1 million worth of tea in Boston Harbor.
When someone comes along and smacks us, we don't turn the other cheek. That's not who we are.
The British respond by shutting down